My name is Jenna Cole. I'm 26 years old, and I thought the hardest battles of my life were finally behind me. I worked, I sacrificed, and I clawed my way up until I could buy the penthouse I dreamed of since I was a teenager. But I was wrong. My parents didn't see it as my achievement. They saw it as something they could hand to my sister like a gift, and the night my father slapped me across the face, I realized just how far they were willing to go. I remember standing in the center of my living room, the city lights pouring in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Those lights had always made me feel powerful, like I had finally made it in a city that chewed people up and spat them out. But that night, the room felt like a cage. My parents sat on the leather couch as if they owned the place. Rebecca, my sister, lounged with her legs crossed, sipping from a glass of wine she hadn't paid for, a smug smile stretching across her face. "Just sign the papers, Jenna," my mom said softly, like she was asking me to pass the salt at dinner. "Your sister needs this stability more than you do. You're young. You'll find another place." I blinked, not sure I'd heard her right. Find another place. I bought this penthouse with my own money. With years of work, of saving, of missing out on things so I could pay the down payment. And now you just want me to hand it over? Rebecca's smirk widened. She leaned forward, her voice dripping with condescension. "Come on, Jen, you don't even know how to enjoy a place like this. It deserves someone who can actually make it shine." My chest burned. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to throw her glass of wine right out the window. Instead, I took a step back and tried to steady my voice. "You mean it deserves someone spoiled enough to think the world owes her everything?" Her eyes narrowed. "Careful! That was always Rebecca's way. Play the victim, twist the narrative, then let Mom and Dad swoop in to defend her." And just like clockwork, Dad leaned forward, his tone sharp. "Don't talk to your sister like that. She's been through enough. You have a responsibility to her." My jaw tightened. A responsibility? To hand over my life's work because she can't manage her own? Dad's eyes flashed, and before I could even register what was happening, his hand came down across my cheek. The sound cracked through the room, louder than the city traffic below. My face stung, but it was the silence afterward that hurt worse. Rebecca's grin, Mom's refusal to meet my eyes, Dad's heavy breathing, like he'd just put me in my place. I pressed my palm against my cheek, feeling the heat radiating through my skin. For a second, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I had imagined a lot of betrayals in my life, but never that. Finally, my voice broke free. "You hit me." For her, Dad stood taller, his voice low but firm. "Sometimes you need to be reminded where you come from. Family comes first. And right now, family means doing the right thing for your sister." Rebecca tilted her head, pretending to look sympathetic. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Jen. Just sign the penthouse over. You'll feel better once you do." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Better? Watching you take the one thing I built for myself?" I shook my head slowly, staring at each of them. "You'll have to kill me before I give you this place." The room shifted then. Rebecca's smugness cracked, if only for a second. My mom sighed heavily, muttering something about me being dramatic. But I wasn't dramatic. I was awake. Awake to the reality that my own blood would bleed me dry if I let them. I turned my back to them, walking toward the window. My reflection stared back at me against the glittering skyline, a woman bruised but not broken. The sting on my cheek was nothing compared to the fire growing inside me. I thought about every late night at the office, every meal I skipped to save money, every doubt I fought through to get here. I thought about how none of them were there when I was drowning in work, when I was hustling through rejection after rejection. And now, when I was finally standing on solid ground, they wanted to push me back under. I whispered to myself, almost too quietly for them to hear. "You'll regret this." Rebecca shifted in her seat. "What did you say?" I turned, meeting her eyes. I said, "You'll regret underestimating me." The air tightened around us. For the first time that night, her smirk faltered. I walked past them, my footsteps echoing against the marble floor. The sting on my cheek pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, a reminder of the line that had been crossed. I knew then this wasn't just about property. It was about power, control, and the role they expected me to play. Silent, obedient, disposable. But I wasn't disposable. And I wasn't silent anymore, as I closed the door behind me, leaving them in my living room like strangers squatting in my home. One thought burned through my mind. If my parents and sister wanted a war over my penthouse, then a war was exactly what they were going to get. I wasn't born into wealth. Every brick of the life I built came from nights I didn't sleep and mornings I didn't eat. When people see the penthouse now, they think it must have been handed to me. But the truth? It was carved out of exhaustion, sacrifice, and a stubborn refusal to give up. Back then, I worked 3 jobs at once. By day, I was an assistant at a marketing firm, answering phones, scheduling meetings, swallowing insults with a smile. At night, I waited tables in a noisy restaurant where tips decided whether I could afford groceries. On weekends, I freelanced, designed projects that blurred my eyes until dawn. Every paycheck felt like a lifeline, but most nights I came home too tired to even count the money. I remember collapsing on my thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, whispering, "One day, this won't be my life." But no one believed in me. My parents thought I was wasting my time chasing dreams in the city. Mom's voice still echoes in my head. "Why don't you just come back home? Marry someone stable. Stop killing yourself for nothing." And Dad, always practical, always dismissive. "A penthouse? You'll never get there, Jenna. That's for people born into money. Not for someone like you." The words cut deeper than they knew. I carried them like chains. But instead of stopping me, they made me hungrier. Years blurred into one another. Rejections, failures, people slamming doors in my face. But then, a break came. My boss at the firm quit suddenly, and I was offered a promotion. The hours doubled, but so did the pay. I poured everything into that job, climbing step by step until one day, I was the one signing contracts instead of fetching coffee. I'll never forget the morning I stood in front of the penthouse building with the keys in my hand. The doorman opened the glass doors like I belonged there. My legs shook as I stepped inside, the marble floors gleaming under my feet. When I unlocked the door to my place, I just stood there for hours, staring at the view. The city stretched out like it was bowing before me. It wasn't just an apartment. It was proof that I had survived everything meant to break me. But when I invited my parents to see it, their reaction wasn't what I dreamed of. Mom walked through the rooms with a stiff smile, running her hand over the countertops. "It's nice," she said flatly, like she was commenting on a hotel room. Dad barely looked up at the view. "Don't get too comfortable. Places like this don't last forever." And Rebecca, she didn't hide her jealousy. She stood by the window, arms crossed, her reflection mingling with the skyline. Wow, must be nice to live like this while the rest of us are struggling. I swallowed, trying to ignore the sting in her voice. "You could do it too, Rebecca. You just have to put in the work." Her laugh was sharp. "Work? You really think you're better than me because you lucked out?" My chest tightened. I wanted to tell her it wasn't luck, that it was sweat, tears, and years of grinding, but I knew she wouldn't hear it. That night, as I sat alone in the penthouse, their words echoed louder than the city below. Instead of celebrating, I felt the shadow of their doubt creeping back in. Still, something inside me whispered that this was only the beginning, that the penthouse wasn't just a home, it was a battlefield. And deep down, I knew my family wasn't finished with me yet. I should have known the moment Rebecca dragged her suitcase across my marble floor that temporary was a lie. She stood in the doorway with a smile too sweet to be real, promising it was just for a few weeks while she figured her life out. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think maybe this was my chance to mend things with her. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered that I had just let a fox into the henhouse. At first, she acted harmless. She said she only needed the guest room, that she'd stay out of my way. But within days, I noticed the shift. My minimalist living room, clean lines, silver accents, suddenly sprouted throw pillows I never bought, bright pink and glittery like something from a college dorm. My kitchen counters, once spotless, became cluttered with her coffee pods and half-empty snack bags. It was like the space itself was rebelling against me, slowly slipping out of my hands. I tried to brush it off. She was family, after all. Family made compromises. But then came the night I opened my own door to find strangers lounging on my couch, laughing over wine glasses Rebecca had pulled from the cabinet. What's going on here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Rebecca spun around, grinning. "Relax, Jen. These are my friends. I told them we'd hang out here tonight. Hope you don't mind." I did mind. I minded more than I could put into words. But the room was already filled with people's laughter, with music I hadn't chosen, with energy that pushed me out of my own space. I forced a smile, mumbling, "Make yourselves at home." Rebecca's eyes sparkled as if she had won something. The worst moment came 2 weeks later. She had invited even more people. Neighbors, co-workers, people I barely recognized. The penthouse buzzed with chatter, glasses clinking, perfume mixing with the smell of cheap takeout. I felt like a ghost drifting through the crowd, invisible in my own home. That's when I heard her. Rebecca was standing by the window, the city glowing behind her like she owned it. A group surrounded her, hanging on her every word. She lifted her glass and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Honestly, I'm just letting my sister crash here for now. She's figuring things out, poor thing. But she's lucky I don't mind sharing." Laughter rippled through the group. My blood ran cold. Crash here? Like I was the one squatting in her space? I froze, my cheeks burning. Every pair of eyes that flicked toward me carried pity, not respect. I wanted to scream, to stand on the table and shout the truth, that I had paid for every square foot of this penthouse, that I had bled for it while she had coasted her entire life. But the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I excused myself, retreating to the balcony. The night air hit me hard, cooling the fire in my chest but not extinguishing it. I stared at the skyline, the very view that once symbolized victory, and all I felt was humiliation. Behind me, I could still hear Rebecca laughing, her voice carrying like a knife through the glass. I gripped the railing, whispering under my breath, "Enjoy it while you can." Because in that moment, something shifted inside me. For years, I had let Rebecca twist the narrative, let her paint herself as the favored one, the deserving one. But this was my home, my life, my story. And though I stayed quiet that night, swallowing my rage, one thing was certain: silence was not going to be my role forever. I should have known something was wrong when my parents called, saying they wanted to drop by. They never just dropped by. When the elevator doors opened, Mom stepped out carrying a tin of cookies as if it were a peace offering, while Dad trailed behind her, jaw tight, eyes scanning the place like he was already measuring curtains. Rebecca greeted them like royalty, hugging them as though this were her penthouse. I stayed back, arms crossed, waiting for the performance to end. We sat in the living room, the skyline glittering behind us. Mom cleared her throat and said softly, "Jenna, honey, we've been thinking. Rebecca's been through a lot. She deserves stability right now. You're strong. You'll be fine anywhere. But your sister, she needs this home." My chest tightened. This isn't about stability. It's about taking something that isn't hers. Rebecca leaned back on the couch, smirking. "Don't make it sound so dramatic." "It's just paperwork." I shot her a look sharp enough to cut glass. "Paperwork that would erase years of my life." Dad suddenly leaned forward, his voice booming. "Enough, Jenna. You're being selfish. You've always been selfish. Rebecca finally has a chance to get her life on track, and you can't even support her?" His words hit harder than I wanted to admit. For a second, the old guilt stirred inside me, the child who always felt like she wasn't enough. But I forced myself to breathe, to remember the sleepless nights, the double shifts, the sacrifices no one else had made. "I've supported this family more than you know," I said quietly, my voice trembling but steady. "But I won't give away my home. Not for her. Not for anyone." The room went silent, the tension so thick it felt like the walls were pressing in. Rebecca broke it with a laugh. "You really think you'll come out on top? You're 1 against 3. I met her eyes. "Then I guess it's not going to be a fair fight." The air shifted, sharp and heavy, as though the night itself was holding its breath. I didn't realize it then, but that conversation was just the spark. The fire was still coming. The night it happened is burned into me like a scar. I stood in the center of my living room, my pulse racing, my parents and Rebecca circling me like wolves. They wanted the penthouse signed over that night. No more delays, no more excuses. Mom's voice trembled as she pleaded, "Jenna, please, don't make this ugly. Just sign the deed. Your sister deserves this." I clenched my fists. Deserves? She hasn't earned a thing in her life. Everything she touches crumbles and you hand her more. When does it stop? Rebecca smirked from the corner, swirling a glass of wine like she was watching a show. "Face it, Jen. You're just bitter I'm the favorite." My vision blurred with rage. "Favorite? You've drained them dry, and somehow I'm the problem." Dad's voice exploded through the room. "Enough. Stop disrespecting your sister. Stop acting like a child. Do what's right." My voice cracked, but I didn't back down. What's right is keeping what I worked for. I will never sign it over. Never. His face hardened, jaw clenched, eyes burning. And then, before I could move, his hand whipped across my face. The slap echoed like thunder. For a moment, time froze. My cheek burned. the sting spreading hot and humiliating. Rebecca's grin widened, satisfied. Mom looked away, pretending she hadn't seen it. And Dad stood tall, like he'd finally put me in my place. I staggered back, my hand on my cheek. My throat tightened, but no tears came. Something colder than sadness settled in me, a resolve I hadn't known until that second. "You hit me," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "For saying no." Dad's voice was low, almost calm. "For forgetting who you are." I looked at him, then at Rebecca, then at Mom. I realized in that moment I was a stranger in their eyes. Not a daughter, not a sister, just an obstacle. Slowly, I straightened my shoulders. "If you think I'll give in after this, you don't know me at all." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, you'll cave." "You always do." I stepped closer, staring straight at her. "Not this time." And without another word, I grabbed my coat and walked out. The hallway lights blurred as I stormed toward the elevator, my cheeks still throbbing, my heart pounding like a drum. But inside me, something had shifted. I wasn't going to fight them with screams anymore. I wasn't going to let them corner me in my own home. I was going to fight them with silence, with strategy, with patience sharp enough to cut through every lie. As the elevator doors closed, sealing me off from the people who had broken me, I whispered to myself, "You'll regret this." And I meant every word. I spent the next few days walking around with a swollen cheek and a burning fire in my chest. On the outside, I went quiet. On the inside, I was planning. One afternoon, I slipped into a small office building downtown, pulling my hood low. I wasn't meeting friends. I wasn't running errands. I was meeting someone who could protect me better than anyone else ever had. The lawyer was a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Patel. She spread my documents across the polished desk. Contracts, payment records, mortgage statements, all with my name etched clear as day. Her tone was steady. "Jenna, your ownership is airtight. No one can take this place from you unless you hand it over willingly." A wave of relief coursed through me. But it wasn't joy. It was armor. Finally, I had proof I wasn't crazy. Proof that what I'd built was mine. Meanwhile, Rebecca had decided my silence was surrender. I found out through neighbors that she'd invited half the city into my penthouse for a celebration. My blood boiled, but instead of storming in with rage, I straightened my dress, tied my hair, and walked through those double doors like I owned every inch of marble beneath my feet. Because I did. Music pounded through the walls. People laughed, glasses clinked, heels tapped across the hardwood I'd worked so hard to afford. And there she was, Rebecca, standing in the center like a queen on stolen land. "Everyone, welcome to my penthouse," she shouted, soaking in the applause. I stepped forward. The crowd went silent as eyes turned toward me. Rebecca froze, her smile faltering. "What are you doing here?" I let my lips curve into a calm smile. "Oh, I just wanted to see how my place looks." When I'm not around, gasps rippled through the room. I could feel the weight of every stare, half in awe, half in shock. But I didn't raise my voice, didn't lash out. I simply poured myself a drink, sat on my own couch, and crossed my legs as though nothing could touch me. Rebecca's friends whispered, confused. "Wait, I thought this was hers?" Her cheeks flushed crimson. She tried to laugh it off. "Don't mind her. She's just crashing." But I saw the doubt planting itself in their eyes, spreading like wildfire. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to shout. I only had to exist. Calm, unshaken, in the space I had earned. That night, I left without another word, letting Rebecca scramble to hold together the lies she had so carelessly told. And as I stepped into the night air, I smiled to myself. Sometimes silence is louder than any scream. The retaliation came faster than I expected. Within days, whispers spread through my family like poison. My phone lit up with messages from cousins and aunts. "Why are you being so greedy? Why can't you just share?" Rebecca and my parents had done it. They had painted me as the villain. At first, I tried to defend myself. I explained the truth to anyone who would listen. But most of them already had their minds made up. The narrative was simple. Rebecca, the poor, fragile sister, deserved saving. Jenna, the cold, selfish one, just wanted control. The final blow came at a family dinner. I walked into the restaurant, heart pounding, clutching the hope that maybe one person, just one, would see through the lies. But the moment I sat down, I felt the wall of silence. No smiles, no warmth. Just eyes that avoided mine. Rebecca leaned back in her chair, loud enough for the whole table to hear. We tried to help Jenna, but she just doesn't care about family. She only cares about money. A murmur of agreement rolled through the table. My aunt whispered, "That's what I heard too." I forced a breath. Do you all really believe that? After everything I've done, after every sacrifice, do you honestly think I'm the selfish one? No one answered. Not a single head lifted. Even my mother stared down at her plate as if my voice didn't exist. And then Dad muttered the words that broke something in me. "You've brought this on yourself." The humiliation was suffocating. I felt the sting of betrayal deeper than any slap. My own blood had written me out of the story, turned me into a stranger. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. My voice trembled but didn't break. You all want to believe I'm greedy? Fine, believe it. But the truth doesn't vanish just because you bury it under lies. Rebecca smirked, victory shining in her eyes. Keep talking, Jenna. No one's listening. I locked my gaze on her, calm, steady, unblinking. That's what makes it so easy, Rebecca. You think I'm powerless? But the truth? I've got proof. And when the time comes, I won't even have to say a word. You'll destroy yourself. A ripple of unease passed through the table, but no one spoke. I turned and walked out, the cold night air wrapping around me like armor. They thought they had silenced me. But silence, I had learned, could be the sharpest weapon of all. People saw the penthouse as a symbol of greed, but what they didn't know was the truth. My family had been living off me for years. It started small. My parents called late at night, saying the electricity bill had slipped through their hands. I wired the money. Rebecca wanted to launch a fashion brand, and when it tanked within 6 months, who do you think quietly paid off the suppliers so her name wasn't ruined? Me? Every time they stumbled, I was the net that caught them. Rent? Debt? Car payments? I was the silent machine in the background, keeping them afloat. And they repaid me by calling me selfish. I used to believe that buying them time was love. That if I carried the weight, one day they would see me as worthy. But sitting alone in that penthouse, the truth pressed on me like a blade. I was never the daughter. I was the wallet, so I made a decision. The next time my dad asked for help covering a loan payment, I told him my salary was tight. He went quiet, then hung up. My mother followed a few days later, panicked because her credit card was maxed. I gave her nothing but sympathy, and Rebecca, oh, Rebecca, she was already circling the drain. Another business idea, another round of investors who never showed. When she asked me to cover her shortfall, I said, "I'm sorry, I can't this time." The silence on the other end of the phone was thick. Then came the hiss, "You owe me, Jenna. Without me, you'd be nothing." I almost laughed. Funny, because without me, you'd be bankrupt. I hung up, my hand shaking. Not from fear, but from the quiet thrill of freedom. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. Debt collectors called the house. Letters piled up. My parents whispered behind closed doors, voices sharp with worry. Rebecca's smile became brittle, her temper shorter. I watched it all, calm, almost cold. For the first time in my life, I wasn't holding them together. I was letting them fall. And as their world began to unravel, I realized something. They had underestimated me again. They thought taking the penthouse would be the end of me. But what they didn't see was that the real power had never been the walls around me. It had been the money flowing through my hands. The quiet sacrifices I made that no one respected. Now, I was cutting off the lifeline, and soon they would learn what drowning feels like. The rumors reached me before the paperwork did. Rebecca, backed by my parents, was taking legal steps to make the penthouse hers. They were confident. Too confident. When the official letter arrived, I almost laughed. Claims of co-ownership, family rights, and even a twisted line about how I had promised to give the property to Rebecca. Lies, written in ink, but instead of rage, I felt a strange calm. Because I knew something they didn't. I was already 3 steps ahead. The day of the confrontation, the lawyer's office smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Rebecca walked in wearing a sharp blazer, her smile smug. My parents trailed behind her, nodding like proud generals leading their favorite soldier into battle. She dropped a folder on the desk. "This proves the penthouse should be mine." I leaned back, folding my arms. "Go on." "Entertain me?" Her lawyer began rattling off accusations, each one more absurd than the last. Verbal agreements, implied intention, financial dependency. I let them finish. Then I slid my own stack of documents across the table. Deeds, bank transfers, receipts, all with one name stamped again and again. Mine. I spoke slowly, every word cutting like glass. This penthouse was purchased solely under my name. Every payment, every cent came from my account. Not hers, not theirs, mine. There's no co-ownership. No promises, just facts, Rebecca's smirk wavered. She glanced at her lawyer, who shuffled uncomfortably through the papers. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Tell me, Rebecca, when you told everyone I was crashing in my home, did you ever stop to think the law might disagree? My mother tried to interject. Jenna, please don't be so cold. We're family. Family? I cut her off, my voice steady. Family doesn't hit. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't try to steal the roof you bled for. This isn't family. This is theft dressed as love. For the first time, Rebecca had no comeback. Her nails dug into the table, her jaw trembling. Finally, she snapped the folder shut and stormed out, muttering under her breath. My parents scrambled after her, their grand plan crumbling in silence. I stayed seated, calm, collected, watching the door swing closed. The lawyer across from me cleared her throat. You handled that better than most, I smiled faintly. That's because I've stopped fighting with screams. Now, I fight with proof. As I left the building, the sun broke through the clouds, warm against my skin. For the first time, Rebecca's confidence had cracked. And a cracked foundation can't hold forever. This war wasn't over. But now, it was on my terms. It was a Sunday afternoon when the knock came. For a moment, I thought it was another delivery. But when I opened the door, there they were. My parents. They didn't storm in this time. No shouting, no demands. Just two tired faces, worn down by the very storm they'd helped create. Mom clutched her purse like it held her dignity, while Dad's eyes darted around the penthouse as if he couldn't believe he no longer controlled it. We sat in silence for a long minute before Dad finally spoke. His voice wasn't booming anymore. It cracked. Jenna, we need to talk. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Go ahead. He swallowed hard. We may have been harsh. Things got out of hand. Your sister, she's under pressure. We thought giving her this place would give her stability. Maybe we pushed too far. Mom nodded quickly. We just want peace in the family again. Isn't that what you want too? Their words should have softened me, but instead, they twisted deeper. After years of carrying their burdens, after one slap that burned through my skin and heart, now they wanted peace? I do want peace, I said quietly, but peace doesn't come by taking what isn't yours. Dad leaned forward, his hands trembling. Then, what do you want, Jenna? Tell us what it'll take to end this. For the first time, I saw it. The fear. The desperation in the man who had once towered over me, who thought his authority was untouchable. And it broke me a little, not out of sympathy, but out of grief. Because the truth was, I wanted my parents to stand beside me, not against me. I wanted their pride, not their manipulation. But the more I gave, the more they took. I took a deep breath. What I want is respect. What I want is honesty. What I want is to never be slapped again for standing up for myself. The room fell heavy with silence. My father's jaw twitched, his pride still fighting to rise, but his shoulders slumped. He had no weapon left. Mom's eyes brimmed with tears. Please, Jenna, don't turn your back on us. I shook my head. You already turned your backs on me. I'm just done chasing you. They left not with anger, but with defeat. And as the door closed behind them, I felt something strange. A mix of heartbreak because I had finally seen my parents as fragile humans and empowerment. Because for once, I wasn't the one begging. The unraveling came faster than I expected. Rebecca's company collapsed under its own weight, her debts piling higher than she could climb. Without my silent bailouts, her world crumbled. And my parents, drained of savings, couldn't save her either. But the moment that seared into memory came one evening at an upscale restaurant. I had been invited by colleagues, people who had seen me rise through long nights and stubborn grit. The clinking of glasses, the soft hum of conversation. It was a world I had built for myself. And then she appeared. Rebecca. Dressed in designer clothes she clearly couldn't afford anymore, her makeup smeared from tears she'd tried to hide. She marched right up to my table and suddenly the whole restaurant turned their heads. Jenna, she said, her voice cracking. Please, I need your help. The room froze. My colleagues glanced between us, whispers already starting. I sat back, calm, composed, my heart steady in a way it had never been before. "What kind of help?" I asked softly, knowing full well. She clasped her hands together like a child. "The debts, the rent. I can't do it alone. You're the only one who can save me." I remembered the smirk on her face the night Dad slapped me. The way she told guests I was just crashing in my own home. Every humiliation, every betrayal, standing there in designer heels, begging me in front of everyone. My voice came out steady, almost cold. "Do you remember when you called me selfish? When you laughed as Dad raised his hand against me? Tell me, Rebecca, was I supposed to forget all that?" Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Rebecca's face turned pale, her mouth opening and closing without words. "I can't," she started, but I cut her off. "You can't undo what's been done. You wanted my life, my home, my name, and now you want my mercy. But mercy isn't given when there's no remorse." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. My colleagues sat wide-eyed, watching history unravel at our table. Rebecca's knees bent as if she might fall right there on the floor. "Please, Jenna. Just this once. I'll change. I swear." I felt the weight of the moment pressing on me, the temptation to gloat, to throw her humiliation back in her face. But instead, I took a breath, calm and deliberate. "I wish you the best, Rebecca, but I won't save you this time." Her lip trembled, eyes filling with fury and shame. Without another word, she stumbled out of the restaurant, whispers chasing her out the door. I looked around at the faces still staring at me. Then I raised my glass, smiled faintly, and said, "Now, where were we?" The table erupted in nervous laughter, and I felt it, the shift, the power settling into my hands. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt untouchable. There came a moment when I realized the shift had happened. Not with a bang, but with silence. For months I had been bracing for another attack, another demand, another cruel twist. But instead, they came to me with lowered eyes and hesitant steps. The family who once cornered me in my own living room, who slapped me for saying no, now sat across from me at my kitchen table, waiting for me to speak. Rebecca's face was pale, thinner than I remembered, the fire in her eyes replaced by exhaustion. My mother looked 10 years older, wringing her hands until the knuckles turned white. And my father, the man who once thundered over every room, sat slouched, his voice rough when he finally spoke. "Jenna, we can't do this anymore." I leaned back, calm, my heart steady. "Do what exactly?" He looked down, ashamed. "Fight. We thought we were protecting Rebecca. Maybe we were just losing control." Rebecca's eyes flicked up to mine, desperate but silent. I let the moment breathe, feeling the power that had once been stripped from me now resting fully in my hands. It wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't even about the penthouse. It was about the respect I had begged for my whole life, and was finally being forced from them by truth, not pleading. "I'm not here to destroy you," I said softly. "I never was. But I will not give you this home. I will not hand over my life's work." "That chapter is over," Mom sniffled, her voice trembling. "Then what do you want from us?" I looked at her, then at Dad, then finally at Rebecca. "I want boundaries. I want honesty. And if you want any piece of me left in your lives, you'll respect both." The words hung heavy in the air. For once, no one argued. No one rolled their eyes or called me selfish. They listened, and in that silence, I felt the poetic irony settle in. The family who once demanded everything from me now needed me. The parents who saw me as the strong one now clung to that strength because they had none left. The sister who mocked me for standing my ground now sat humbled, desperate for scraps of peace. It was almost enough to make me laugh. Almost. Instead, I stood, pushing my chair back. "I won't chase you anymore. If you want peace, it's yours. On my terms. If not, then you'll finally learn how it feels to lose me completely." Rebecca opened her mouth as if to argue, but nothing came. She lowered her gaze instead. My father nodded slowly, his pride bending for the first time in his life. And as I walked them to the door, I felt it. The full circle. The control wasn't just in the deed to the penthouse or the money in my account. It was in my voice, my choice, my boundaries. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving their storm. I was standing above it. And they knew it too. The nights are quieter now. The skyline still glitters outside my windows, but it doesn't feel like a trophy anymore. It feels like freedom. Sometimes I think back to the girl I was when I first moved in here, working endless shifts, praying for recognition, desperate for love that always seemed just out of reach. That girl thought she had to buy peace, to sacrifice herself to keep the family together. She didn't know she was already enough. The betrayal cut deeper than I like to admit. The slap, the lies, the humiliation in front of relatives, it scarred me. But scars don't only mark pain. They remind us of healing. I didn't win because I got to keep the penthouse. I won because I learned to keep myself. People think empowerment is loud, that it's about shouting back or winning arguments. But for me, it came in the silence, in the calm decision to stop funding their chaos, in the steady way I told them no and meant it. Revenge never healed me. Boundaries did, and as for Rebecca, she's still stumbling, still trying to find her place in a world where I no longer cushion her falls. My parents, they're learning slowly what respect looks like when it isn't handed to them. Do I forgive them? Not yet, maybe not ever fully, but I no longer carry the weight of their choices. That's theirs to bear. I sit in my living room sometimes, watching the city stretch out below, and I think of the irony. The slap that was meant to silence me became the spark that lit everything. It broke me for a moment, yes, but it also built me into someone unshakable. So if you ask me how the story ends, I'll tell you this. The slap that once silenced me became the reason I found my voice, and no one will ever take it away again